Guys, I'm here to tell you the globalists want to put a chip inside your brain so they can know your location at all times. In unrelated news, follow me on Instagram. Guys, it's Paul, combat veteran, MMA fighter, YouTuber, and today we are taking a look at the only video game version of the Illuminati New World Order conspiracy theory. This is Seth's review of Deus Ex, Stop Globalists, Tase Children, TM. Let's get into it.
Hey people, Seth here. Today, I will be covering an older game that, at the time, was considered the best conspiracy simulator on the market, Deus Ex. Looking back now, it was a scarily accurate prediction of a future. Despite being made a full year before the 9/11 attacks, Deus Ex depicted our world in 30 years as an authoritarian dystopia. In other words, they were 30 years off. In this bleak future, there's only the super wealthy and the super fucking poor. The only food available is candy bars and soybeans. The only safe drinking water is orange soda, and 10 packs of cigarettes are now strong enough to kill you instantly. For this reason, secondhand smoking is now the preferred method of postnatal abortion. Or
Postnatal abortion is a euphemism for murder, by the way.
if you care about the environment and want a more eco-friendly solution, you could also try jabbing your ungrateful spawn with a cattle prod, then put them up for adoption in the ocean. Deus Ex is an amazing game, and I'm glad people pushed me to replay it. You appreciate it more in your man-child years. Anyway, plot.
Man-child years. You know, if every house costs 50 times your annual earnings, then you'll never have to leave your parents' basement. You can't afford to.
You play as JC Denton. The JC stands for
Jesus Christ, Denton.
You're one of two nano-augmented brothers, trained from a young age to be elite agents of UNATCO, the United Nations Anti-Terror Coalition, which was founded after terrorists bombed the Statue of Liberty. And
Guys, yeah, this is creepy because, okay, right. Let's give the Zoomers some context. Before 9/11, right? I mean, one, there was no Department of Homeland Security. It was not under any umbrella. Like, there was no umbrella for everything that crossed the U.S.'s borders, right? And all the intelligence sharing failures and all of it. So they created the Department of Homeland Security. Now, I know what you're thinking. That sounds a lot like the Department of Justice, but it's not. They're separate. They're actually in conflict with each other. But more importantly, the UN-driven coalition against terrorism, well, we kind of did that too. In Afghanistan, there was a NATO mission to stop the terrorists there. And in Iraq, we had the Coalition of the Willing, because the case to go into Iraq was so flimsy and almost every other country realized that it was complete BS, that only countries that we could basically cajole, bribe, and wink our way to join us did so. These include such large and powerful nations like, you know, okay, we had Great Britain, that's real, but the next biggest was like Poland, right? And does Poland have strategic interests in Iraq? No, it does not, but it does have strategic interests in having its forces partnered with and partially equipped by the United States. Another interesting factoid, one of the countries that joined us on the coalition was actually Georgia, the country. And in 2008, while they were still assisting the U.S. in Iraq, their best brigade was actually in country when the Russians invaded Georgia, and their crack troops were all deployed to Iraq, where, of course, Georgia has no strategic interests. So it was really a huge debacle, and really the state of Georgia, right? The thing it needed its military for the most to stop the major geopolitical rival on its borders, it was powerless to do so because it got roped into the Coalition of the Willing.
as expected, everybody thinks it was an inside job to justify increased surveillance and create a supranational entity that could operate outside and above the jurisdiction of.
Here's the thing, guys, with conspiracies. It doesn't have to be an inside job for a politician or world leader or national leader, to use it to further something they already wanted to do, right? The Bush administration wanted to go into Iraq, right? They wanted to change regimes in the Middle East using the military to install democracies because they were going to be friendly to the U.S. So 9/11 was just it didn't have to be an inside job, right? Because the conspiracy there didn't need to be a conspiracy. It gave them all the material they needed. And if it wasn't 9/11, they would find another instance that would provide the political capital to allow them to do it. Right. Same with the old, with the big C, the big C-19, right? Look, when Trump was president, he used it. One of his earliest responses was to put massive curtails on immigration that would never have been held up by a court otherwise, right? It was a lightning fast response by an administration that admittedly was pretty slow in its response in almost every other dimension, right? Look at the flip side. Look at all the COVID protection, justifications used to try to bankroll this infrastructure bill, right? Or originally it was supposed to be one bill that included things that were, not really related to building back from the COVID. Damn it, I said it. God, don't demonetize me, YouTube. Building back from the big C-19, right? But like paid family leave, improved childcare options. These are all things that, whether you like them or you don't, are sort of unrelated policy positions that the Democratic Party has wanted to see rolled out for a long time. And so they just use these opportunities, these crises, to further their objectives. And all it takes is a little bit of spin. You can link almost any objective to almost any crisis. Right? It's one of I think one of the saddest what ifs is that while we don't know exactly, Bush versus Gore, one of the complaints in that election was that the candidates were almost identical. That was the election going on while this game was released. That Bush and Gore were almost the same in terms of their policy positions, but their philosophy was very different, right? Al Gore was an early person who acknowledged climate change, right? And in contrast, George Bush was called a neocon, who believed that military power and force, a typically conservative outlook, could be used to implement democracy and human rights worldwide, right? So when we got George Bush, we thought we were getting someone who was almost indistinguishable from Al Gore until the crisis came and they were able to implement many of the policies that they might have considered pie in the sky before. So Al Gore may have actually used that to say, hey, as a national security issue, we're going to buy less Saudi oil and implement a bunch of green, protocols. Maybe that would have been a lot. It definitely would have been less bad than the Iraq War, which was literally just a $3 trillion and, thousands of lives just wasted, right? Iraq isn't really any better. It's still under the heel of, foreign powers and isn't particularly better than it was under Saddam.
Individual countries. This is nonsense. The true purpose of UNATCO is to protect you and all free citizens of the world from terror, a war on terror, if you will. Your job is to investigate, arrest, and kill terrorists across the world, but not talk to them, because that's how they get you. They get in your head. They start making you ask funny questions, and before you know it, bang! You're a liberal. If you shoot on sight and follow orders without question, you'll go far in UNATCO. Also, the world is suffering an outbreak of infectious disease called the Grey Death, and the only cure for it is a vaccine called ambrosia.
Oh god, if we're getting demonetized, friends. What I need to do is have a Patreon, so that way I could just embrace this content like triply hard. But because everything is through YouTube, I have to be like extra YouTube compliant.
Well, it's not really a vaccine. A vaccine would treat you, not temporarily halt progression for 48 hours. Did I mention there's not enough vaccine to go around? But just enough to make sure the most important members of our society get it, namely bureaucrats, politicians, and any person with wealth and influence. That's quite a coincidence, isn't it?
Sounds a lot like money.
but don't think on it too much. That's for philosophers. Don't be one of those Greek homos. Problem is, these terrorist groups keep stealing shipments of ambrosia, and Lord forbid, if ambrosia gets into the hands of a poor, I'm gonna have a stroke. It's not a pretty world, JC, but we all gotta make sacrifices. Some more than others. A lot more than others. Anyway, I won't spoil too much of a story for you, but let's just say that in Deus Ex, the ruling elite control all of the banking, communications, and biotech industries. They were all in a happy agreement, exploit and steal from everybody else. It was harmony. It was peace. Then, one of them said, we have an incurable virus. Why the fuck do we need the rest of you? And now, they are no longer in a happy agreement. Every secret society, the Illuminati.
Okay. Yeah. I don't think this is... here's the thing. If there's a secret conspiracy of elites where they all sort of glad-handed stuff, I'm obviously not a part of it, right? I'm a YouTuber whose lighting sucks, right? If I was an elite, I would have at least an elite level of lighting. So if you notice me starting to suddenly make more politicized content and my lighting gets good, then you'll know. You'll know the Illuminati have got me. It's right in their name, Illuminate. Like, you think they would let an Illuminati have a ring light and a desk lamp? No, of course not. But if there are Illuminati, right, they're probably not like having meetings coming up with an exact plan, you know, Crab 17 or whatever. But what does happen is that if you're at the top tier of society, in almost every society, you have an incentive, right? You're on top. Your ability to grow to the next level, it doesn't exist. There is no next level, right? And so the result is that you have an incentive to stagnate. This is what happens in almost every historic empire. You have these elites, often hereditary elites, and they acquire so much wealth and power, and that they just can't, everything looks like a risk to the system, just like a dictator. That's the reason why dictators purge their inner circles all the time. It's because in order to stay on top, you have to have constant vigilance because you know everyone else would rather be on top. And just like an individual dictator, when you have this immense amount of power, you know that any change to the system, the way things are run, is a risk to you. And so that's why, regardless of what they say or do or the positions they espouse, almost no like top tier like company, CEO, politician is going to really advocate for big heaping change. They might talk about it, but they won't actually take action on it. And that's just because, again, any change represents an existential risk to your hold on the reins of power. Someone else could rise up instead, and they don't want to see that happen.
Illuminati, the Bilderbergs, the Rothschilds, the Bogdanovs, Wu-Tang Clan, they're all in complete turmoil, and it's all a grand conspiracy for control of a modern...
But it doesn't mean that I'm saying the elites. I know I sound like Alex Jones. I just don't know a better term, right? Because it includes the billionaire class, certainly, right? But it also includes, you know, top-level politicians, I mean, you can figure it out, right? There's some people that are in the spotlight and some people that aren't, but you know, you've just got to remember that they don't have to coordinate. If you're smart and you see the information and you all see the same information, then you're going to come to the same logical conclusion, right? It's like a math problem, right? You could give a math problem to any 12th grader, like an arithmetic problem, and we'll all come to the same answer, even if we don't have the same language or culture or commonality. It's because if you control the inputs and you know how you have a rational actor, you can control the outputs. So if you're again, you're someone who sits on the top of the social pyramid in your society, then you're going to look around and be like, nothing must disrupt this pyramid at any level, or else I will be the thing that topples from it, right? I'm the most precarious point. I'm at the very top.
World for enacting a new world order. Unfortunately, you're caught up in the middle of all this, and like it or not, your choices and actions will shape the world.
Don't think I won't report this.
For better or worse.
By the way, Denton, stay out of the ladies' restroom. That kind of activity embarrasses the agency more than it does you.
Game.
Ooh, shots fired.
Gameplay. It's very good. There's a fuck ton of controls, but they're very good controls. In case you have lost your keyboard since the last video, I recommend getting a new one. The UI records absolutely everything. It's fantastic. You can even add your own notes. Skills are self-explanatory, and as intelligent gamers, you will receive no explanation. Throughout the game, you get assigned to missions from UNATCO, but each location is pretty open, forcing you to investigate and fulfill side objectives in order to progress the main story. You get
I mean, here's the thing that's pretty cool about some of these games with, you know, I don't want to say lower tier graphics, but yeah, lower tier graphics is like it frees up so much more storytelling. And in some ways, I worry, like when you have something like, you know, pick your Call of Duty, where the story is really light, right? It's a couple hours of linear walkthroughs and like a little bit of a plot with a twist at the end. You're just like, why did I come here? Well, you came here for the graphics, and you came here for another first-person shooter with marginally better graphics, and a couple of gee-whiz features that the previous game didn't have. Something explodes that didn't used to explode. Something you can drive that you didn't used to be able to drive. You know, in older games, it was so much more resource intensive that there was no option to slap together a game. If you were going to put the technical effort into creating this game, then it was a trivial matter to be like, oh, let's add a bunch of menu clicks to help flesh out the story. Let's add a bunch of this like rich world building, right? That was like secondary. Writers and world building and files you can collect, secondary to the technical requirements of putting out even a basic polygon game. And you see it with indie developers, right? Indie developers in their passion projects, they'll make these little roguelikes or sprite games, but they'll just acknowledge like, hey, I've basically automated the development of this game. Instead, you know, the software has made it trivial to put the actual gameplay together, so this is just going to be me telling you a story, which frankly makes some pretty awesome games.
Rewarded for exploration constantly, so there's no reason not to do it. Strangely, the NPCs of Deus Ex have a habit of dropping iPads everywhere containing their banking details and not changing their recovery passwords throughout my playthrough.
Interesting. I can't imagine anything like that. What sort of person would have an iPad-shaped screen in which they don't password protect it? Let's be honest, like a third of your friends don't password protect their phones, right? They are just begging to get hacked. And in fact, if you don't password protect your phone, if you get pulled over, cops can search it. They don't need a warrant. If you password protect it, depending on the states and the circumstances, and I'm not a lawyer, but generally there's some precedent that you need to get a warrant before you search a locked phone.
I have encountered not a single person who gives a shit about their financial well-being, leading me to believe that NPCs in this game are actually quite realistic depictions of people living in the first world.
Yeah. I don't know if he's going to make this point, but I'll make it first. How many stupid subscriptions do you have that you don't use? I have a PlayStation Plus subscription that I got 2 years ago to play with my brother. Neither of us play PlayStation anymore. We don't even want to. We finished the only game that we enjoyed. And yet, every month I get $10 withdrawn, and every month I go, I'm going to log off and do it. And I'm a pretty focused person. I get things done. Look at how many videos I make. I can do things if I have to. And yet, PlayStation knows that if I get reminded once a month and nobody asks me to quit, I will continue to pay their stupid company $10. So I can only imagine what people who aren't as neurotic as me have getting withdrawn from their finances. I also paid for dental insurance from 2 companies for like a year, right? I just forgot. And dental insurance is kind of cheap. Yeah, so this is how this all shakes out, right? People are exactly like this.
Let's talk about setting. Most of your missions send you out to cities. Then you head back to the UNATCO base on Liberty Island. It's actually really nice to visit UNATCO headquarters in between missions. This is pretty much your home. You can talk with your boys, break into closets, hack everyone's computer, and get sexual harassment charges from HR.
I've already reported you once.
UNATCO. We only recruit the best of the best to keep you safe.
I just love how the lighting is so bad. It's just like an underground base. Even if it was an underground base, you'd put some like vitamin D lighting in there.
As Denton, you can use different tools to meet your objectives, depending on whether you want a loud or stealthy entrance, a trigger-happy or non-lethal solution. At the start of a game, you can even choose a starting weapon. Of course, the only correct option is the Gep gun for silent takedowns. You can equip yourself with whatever you can get your hands on. Some examples are cattle prods, pepper sprays, and Chinese nanoblades that refold themselves 1,000 times each second just to flex on the Japanese.
Maybe that's just like one of those euphemisms where they're like, the Spanish flu, when there's nothing Spanish about it.
You get most of your weaponry by stealing shit from other people. You are a bionic superhuman. They can't stop you. Sometimes you'll be forced to pay for certain items or services. This is rarely a problem, since you can get most of your credits by hacking ATM machines. Shooting in Deus Ex isn't so much about...
I mean, again, you guys gotta remember that 30 years ago, or 20 years ago, just an ATM was less, I think it was only like 10 years old. The idea that you could go to a little machine, it would read they called them bank cards, and it would spit out money at you, right? Spit out your own money. That was seen as a huge innovation at the time. The idea of a credit card, right? They used to be recorded on a machine. It would literally pull the numbers off the card, and then the retailer would, like, I guess, mail it in or call it in, right? So this is very forward looking for 20 years ago, right? Even though nowadays we're like, hack your bank info, of course, online, duh.
About speed. It's about waiting in a corner for your aiming reticle to shrink small enough to actually hit your targets. Without training, this takes about a year. With training, this still takes about a year. For this reason, the stealthy approach is much more satisfying. You peek out behind corners, and then you shoot people with tranquilizer darts, and then you run away as they scream and pass out.
By the way, did you see what happened to the soldier we sent into the statue? He turned up unconscious.
No, sir. Friendly fire?
Not so friendly, I'm afraid. I have opened an investigation. Dismissed.
Just a reminder, the investigation will turn up nothing, but you should probably watch your shit.
Just be careful, because sound travels in this game, and if you accidentally drop a soy packet on the ground, the seismic tremors it creates will set off every alarm on the level. For more lethal solutions, you could just use a gun, but what's the fun in that? As a nano-augmented god, you can crush people by the sheer weight of your thighs.
I mean, here's the thing. It may not be the weight of a soy packet that you're throwing around. It may just be the fact that you know if someone has dropped a soy packet around you, and you know someone's going to be trying to break into your facility. So when you see it, you're just like, hey, there's an unwanted person here.
JC Thick Denton fills his victims with terror in their last breathing moments. There's plenty of other augmentations you can install, which take up mutually exclusive slots on the body. No matter what you pick, they're all pretty useful, and upgrading them only makes their powers more ridiculous. Throughout the story, you go to a variety of locations and speak to a huge number of people. Even unimportant side characters usually have several lines each, and the dialogue itself is fantastic.
I heard that he was a frequent visitor to this compound. Do you know him?
The luminous path is closed to Guilos.
Interesting. Sorry, whenever someone says the luminous path, I always think of the shining path, which is another thing that'll get me demonetized. It's a Peruvian, like, Marxist collectivist terror group.
Sees perpetual autism also adds to the mood of the game. He's so deadpan and emotionless that he turns serious conversation into unintentional black comedy.
Oh my God, Daddy!
What a shame.
He can't really be... There must be something we can do.
He was a good man. What a rotten way to die.
As the story develops and UNATCO gradually gets infiltrated by...
I love how they've found someone who's, like, partially robotic in their personality to augment. Like, that just makes sense.
Clandestine organizations, you can uncover a lot more about the plot by being inquisitive. There's a huge fuck-ton of lore spread throughout minor characters, computer terminals, newspapers, and books. As you learn more, you can start putting the pieces together, find out who's pulling the strings, and practice your Latin. Also, this game predicted nuclear war between India and Pakistan. They're only 1 year away from becoming a superpower.
No, they're already nuclear powers, guys. India and Pakistan both have nuclear weapons, and they are all pointed directly at one another.
Lord help us all. Real talk, searching carefully and reading everything pays off big. It can even let...
I mean, I've seen way cringier footage of people in the United States, and everybody's like, yeah, the US is a superpower. A little weird, but a superpower.
You completely bypass some of the hardest fights in the game. By modern standards, Deus Ex has the graphical fidelity of blurry vintage pornography, but it is completely functional. However, if it's still an eyesore for you, you can try GMDX or the Deus Ex Revision mod. They both make it very pretty. The sound design is great. Everything sounds clear and crisp, which makes the world feel genuine and authentic.
Are you sure you pressed the right button?
I do not make mistakes of that kind.
Your hand might have slipped.
No, I wanted orange. It gave me lemon lime.
The machine would not make a mistake.
It's the maintenance man. He knows I like orange.
So you think the staff has some kind of plot?
Yes, they do that on purpose.
The music track.
I mean, some of these are the best parts of games, right? Metal Gear Solid was famous for it, just having these random conversations between guards, right? Like all these like little mini Easter eggs, they were just like a feature of games in the best games, really, from like the late 90s into like 2010. And then it was just like programmers, it felt like they decided not to include them. So I guess like Red Dead Redemption and stuff are kind of like that. Yeah, or Red Dead Redemption 2, I imagine, has it, but I think of like GTA 4, right? They had all that sort of like cool, like lived in space kind of stuff.
Tracks are nice too. I sometimes keep the UNATCO conversation theme playing when I'm calling with the shareholders.
Want big giant cocks.
Deus Ex is
Shareholders, I love it.
wonderful, and it doesn't take too
That's what I should start calling the channel members, shareholders or board members or something.
long to finish. It may very well be the definition of a perfect game. I give it an excellent out of however many children I tased during my playthrough.
My dad says you can't get anywhere if you can't.
Mole Kid? Mole Kid? There's mole people and they have children for mole kids? What?
Keep a secret.
So please, give it a shot. It's very cheap, and it still goes on sale from time to time. It's not for everyone, and by that I mean, if you are an illiterate, subhuman troglodyte, and you've somehow managed to evade the special needs wrangler long enough to watch this video, well, firstly,
This is veered deeply into the offensive part.
that's actually very
Yeesh.
impressive, good job, but you might not enjoy it.
Greater Troglodyte. We shall feast and acquire natty gains.
This game as much, but if you are capable of having an attention span, you'll find a plot that captivates you from start to finish, with moral and ethical questions raised that leave you in a slightly higher state of being. Of course, Deus Ex takes a very extreme view of the future, but you must remember that with each day we do not question or challenge our leaders, extreme becomes absurd, absurd becomes implausible, and implausible becomes a reality.
What is it, mister? I'm really hungry.
You don't look that bad. Tell me what you know about the NSF.
I knew it. Someday the NSF is going to win, and I'm gonna give them your description with your stupid shades, and they're gonna kick your ass.
As always, more videos to...
Man, whew. Maybe I should play this game. Maybe I should just like Twitch stream this. This seems up my alley, actually.
So stay tuned. It will also be much more upbeat. Don't worry, a warm
Is that a child suicide bomber? Jesus.
thanks to the many members of the Merchants Guild generously funding and bankrolling these videos. You're all truly wonderful. Have a good one.
Okay, wow, he has a lot of Patreons or whatever. I need to do that. Yeah, maybe rolling out the Patreon is the way to go. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching, and thanks to the members who actually suggested this video to me. This was actually pretty great. I really enjoyed this, and yeah, let me know in the comments if you want to see me like play it or stream it. As long as it doesn't take like 400 hours or whatever. You know, I'm down for whatever, even though I haven't been streaming as much lately. The times are a-changing. You will see more streams, just not next week. This week. If you're watching it this week. You know what I mean. Anyway. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.